Now, the Ukrainian MP Lesia Vasylenko has been on the programme before, but always from her home country. Today, I'm very pleased to say that she joins us live here. It's lovely to see you in person. Thank you so much for coming in. A real pleasure to have you here. Can you just update us on what's the latest on the ground in Ukraine?
It's been a very difficult weekend, and yesterday the whole country and everyone who's Ukrainian has been absolutely devastated at the missiles. In fact, I was on a call with a friend early in the morning yesterday, and all of a sudden he says to me, there's explosions, but there has not been any air raid sirens. And it has been the case for most of Ukraine yesterday. There's not been air raid sirens to warn the people of these missiles that Russia launched. Because as our Ministry of Defense reported later, it's the kind of missiles that cannot really be detected, especially from the direction that Russia was launching yesterday. And as a result, the world has seen the destroyed residential blocks in Dnipro, the massive holes from the missiles in some Ukrainian villages, just a couple of kilometers out from Kiev. And it's just been yet another human tragedy added to the long list of human tragedies caused by Russia.
You know, I was saying in the introduction to you, there's been more strikes on civilian targets. Civilian targets, I mean, like you say, that means holes in apartment blocks, right?
Absolutely. That means innocent men, women, children who were not expecting this on a Saturday, especially after a certain kind of festive period which was prolonged in Ukraine. It's just not something that you expect. It's just not something that, even in the middle of the war, and you know that your country is in a war every single moment of the day, but still you're sort of hoping that it will stick to the battleground. You're hoping that maybe, okay, military targets will be targeted, but not your home, not the home of your loved ones, of your friends. You don't expect to spend your Saturday on the phone, constantly calling family from Kyiv to Kharkiv to Dnipro, asking whether they're alive or not.
Now, Ukraine is poised to see more Russian forces. Are you worried about the direction of the war?
Well, we are worried, first of all, that there will be more missile strikes in the coming days, because we know from intelligence that Russia has not exhausted even half of their arsenal that was intended for these attacks. And we know that there is missile launcher cargo ships in the marine regions ready to go. So this is something we are preparing in the short term. In the long term, of course, and the midterm, it is expected that Russia will regroup and will start relaunching the attacks, especially with spring, when the colds will be when it will not be so difficult because of the cold to make advancements. And this is why Ukraine is constantly on the ask for more weapons and for these tanks. You just mentioned that the UK will be sending tanks, Challenger tanks, to Ukraine. We are extremely grateful for that, and we are hoping that Germany will see this as an example to follow and will eventually give way and give us the tanks and the armored vehicles we have been so desperately asking for, to have that benefit on the battleground.
Let's talk about the tanks, because as you say, the UK sending Challenger 2 tanks, the first time a Western country has pledged tanks. How important is that?
The fighting on the ground, on the eastern, southeastern, northeastern borders or contact line for Ukraine, it's crucial that we have artillery on the ground. It's crucial that we have tanks on the ground, because this is what Russia is fighting us with. So we need this as defense vehicles, but we also need these as counter-offensive instruments to push the Russians back. And it is crucial that we do this by the end of spring, that we get a pushback of Russian forces beyond the Ukraine-Russian borders, the 1991 Ukraine-Russian borders, and that we secure the area with proper defense structures and facilities. And to do that, we need these heavy weapons, which are the tanks.
You said that you hope Germany follows the UK's example. Do you think that some countries are not doing enough?
well, Germany being one of them, I mean, they have these weapons sitting there that they are not using, and that hopefully, fingers crossed, they will not have to use, because Ukraine will be victorious and will manage to fight off the biggest aggressor in Europe. So for Germany not to have to use these tanks, they need to be in Ukraine on the ground fighting. And the same goes for every single country who still has weapons in the storage units, in the storage houses, and is stalling from giving them to Ukraine. Because the only threat in Europe at this moment, and one of the largest threats to security in the world, is Russia. And the only country that can physically stop Russia is Ukraine. And we are happy to do this on the ground, within our territory. We are happy to push back Russia within its borders, but we need the means to do it. And this is why the appeals from our Minister of Defense, from our Foreign Minister, from our President, from every single Ukrainian: give us weapons, give us the tanks, give us the anti-air weapons and systems that we need, give us the ammunition to go with.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, speaking to you today, making these calls, is it often the women of Ukraine who are having to come on programmes like this, who are having to speak to the politicians, to travel the world, because the men are fighting?
It's definitely easier for the women to cross the borders, even if we're talking about women who are in politics, who are in people who are in politics or in government positions. It still is easier because the women are not, not eligible for a mandatory military service. So we are free to cross the border when we like. When it comes to the men, if you are from 18 to 60, the rule of thumb is that you are eligible for military service, and you cannot leave the country as you please. You need to get authorizations, you need to prove that you will be coming back, and that the mission you're going to abroad is really, really necessary. So, of course, it's easier for the women to make these appeals. But regardless who's making these appeals, even if it's not Ukrainians who are making these appeals, I really wish that these appeals would be answered, because today the best humanitarian aid that can be sent to Ukraine is weapons to fight off the Russians.
I was really struck by a photograph that you posted on Twitter just before Christmas. I think we can hopefully have a look at it. It's of you and your family. Can you just explain what's happening in this picture?
Well, this is my youngest. She's a toddler, 18 months old, and we are in a makeshift bomb shelter from a basement in an apartment block just next door to ours. And the thing is, I was going out to the park with Sophia because to give her nap, but she only naps outside. And all of a sudden, there were explosions, which started the stuff started blowing up somewhere very close to us, because these explosions were very much intense, and there was the smell of smoke, of sulfur immediately in the air. And as we started making our way back home, we were ushered in by people from the next apartment block saying, come in, you need to go into the basement right now. And this is exactly what happened. So her nap was interrupted. Of course, she's not sleeping there, and there you have my friend in the picture who's actually trying to entertain her with some Peppa Pig.
It kind of blows my mind. You talk about something that is so familiar and ordinary to so many people watching. Your toddler won't sleep, so you take them in the pram to try and take them outside. You want them to be quiet, so you put Peppa Pig on the phone. And yet it's in such an extraordinary situation for a parent. I can't imagine, I talk to you as a politician, but also as a mother. I just can't really grasp what people in Ukraine are having to go through.
Neither can I, because it just doesn't sit well with the ordinary, with the normal life of a person living in a modern world. You cannot piece the puzzle together. And I think that after the victory, after Ukraine wins, we will have a lot of mending to do and a lot of healing to do, because all of these things which our brain doesn't allow us really to register and to grasp and what we are actually doing, they are going to flood us, and there's going to be a lot of issues to deal with, both for the people who will be coming back from the front lines, as well as the people who will be coming back from abroad, as well as the people who have had to stay and live through these air raids.
Because it does feel like the whole of Ukraine is a front line.
The whole of Ukraine is a front line, and it's a fact.
And do you think that you can win them?
Absolutely. We have no other choice. You have no other choice. We have to win this war for democracy's sake. This is an existential war. For Ukraine, it's existential because we want to exist, we want to live. So this is why we are fighting. But for people who are supporting us, for the UK, for example, it's an existential war because it's existential between good and evil. Who do you want to win? You want good to win. You want the world to be a safe place. You don't want to be seeing pictures like this on Sunday morning, and you most certainly don't want to be living through pictures like this any day of your life. And in order for this not to happen, you need to make sure that Russia loses. And Russia losing must become a very clear statement in everyone's mind, a very clear idea, and one that everyone can back and support.
Thank you so much for being on the programme. It's been a real privilege to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie.